Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. As always, please don't re-upload my stuff and enjoy Chapter 8 of Mornstar, the Maiden Voyage. Chapter 8. Awakening in the morning, Dylan found Dawn still asleep. She was bundled up with her arms close to her face. He smiled and shook her awake. She rubbed her eyes sleepily and looked around. "Ready to start the day?" Dylan asked with a slight bow and his hands in his pockets. Dawn nodded. She got up and began rolling up her blanket. Her eyes were still half closed and she yawned continuously. Dylan began to help, taking out 2 loaves of bread for their breakfast before packing up the rolled blankets. He had just finished arranging everything when he looked up and saw Dawn draped over the rock. She was fast asleep. "Dawn, get up, sleepyhead! We've got to get moving!" Dawn stirred and let out a small moan. She raised her head and slowly climbed down from the rock. Her eyes were still half closed, and he noticed she had not spoken yet this morning. "Hey, are you all right? Can you talk?" Dawn blinked, then moved her mouth slightly. She licked her lips and tried to speak.
Tired. Sleep.
She blinked again, and then again, heavier and heavier until she was sleeping soundly again. "Dawn? Dawn, wake up!" He nudged her and her eyes sprang open. "It's because you used so much magic yesterday. Here, hold my hand, I'll lead you." She held his hand gently and tried her best to keep walking. She looked up and saw his pack swaying as he walked. She felt the warmth of his hand. She smiled weakly and let her eyes close. When she woke, they were in a field of gold. Dylan sat on a small rock against a hillside. "I was wondering when you would wake. Do you feel better now?" Dawn could only stare at him with her mouth open for a time. She looked around her and felt the sun on her back. She smiled and got up. She paid Dylan no heed, for he didn't say anything else. She went for a run in the golden grass and the sun. Her dress didn't grow worn or stained despite its white coloration. She ran for what seemed like miles. Her red-brown hair gently blew across her face. She couldn't stop smiling. Then she tucked her hair as golden light poured upon her. The sun was ginormous, and it was seemingly coming closer. She was enchanted by the sight and called to Dylan over her shoulder, but he didn't answer. She turned her head to look and didn't see him. She ran across the field again, calling his name. When she came to the place she had awoken from, he was nowhere to be found. She spun in circles, her eyes endlessly searching for him, but still to no avail. She grew dizzy and leaned on the stone where he had sat. Her tears came pouring from her eyes, and suddenly a pain so very familiar and so very wrong seized her. She arched and screamed with every ounce of agony that she had inside her. When she opened her eyes, she was abhorred by what she saw. The scene that had played in her mind so often now was once before her again. "Stop! Please stop!" Her screams turned to pitiful whines as her tears remained falling. The scene was different. The same, yet different. A machine, obscured men, and a pain unlike any other. Except one. She saw Dylan in a back room shaking hands with some other obscured man. She cried to him, but he only turned his face to look at her. His expression was absolute. He was going to do anything. She started in a cold sweat. Where was she? This was not the golden field. But Dylan sat crouched over her. "Are you okay? You were having a nightmare. You were screaming." She replied hoarsely.
Yes, I'll be all right.
"Are you crying?"
Yes, I think I am.
"I'm here. Whatever it is you need, I'm here." It was around midnight when she woke. Dylan had been leading her all day without rest. He walked slowly as to not disturb her, so he didn't need it. When the sun was going down, he had stopped to rest and laid Dawn down on the grass. He had drifted off into a half-sleep when he heard her scream. He had jumped up, ready to fight off anyone, but found that Dawn was still asleep. He had tried his best to wake her and eventually did. After the slight disturbance, they calmed down and went back to sleep. Now it was the next morning, and Dawn was finally able to take a look around them where they were. It was a smoldering field. There was no grass, just scorched ground in black, white, and various shades of gray. It looked as if a raging fire had come just hours before.
What happened here?
Dawn asked, concerned. I don't know, but it looks like fire. Maybe this place was also a test field for the government?
How could anyone endure making something as sad as this? It was probably a beautiful field filled with life, but now it's all gone.
Dylan was searching for an answer to her impossible question when his sight befell a small building not far from where they were. Do you see that?
See what?
That building there.
Why, yes. How queer to have a building out here.
It's not too far. Why don't we have a look?
I don't know. What if it's dangerous?
Dylan's hand marking started glowing again when he caught sight of the building. Now only the arrow at the top was glowing, like it was pointing there.
Your hand!
Whoa! Dylan jumped back and noticed the strange nature of the mark. He turned around to face the direction opposite the building, and the glow spun to the bottommost arrow. He turned to face the building again, and the glow spun to the topmost arrow. There must be a curse in there.
Are you sure? Curses usually have tombs of rock or dirt, not of wooden houses.
Not that we know of.
That's true, but still, how do you know?
The mark is pointing to it. We already know it reacts to curses, so one must be in there.
Then we should avoid it. We don't want another curse in your hand.
Yeah, but something tells me that we should go in.
I said one more and you would have to honor your promise.
Dylan knew in the back of his mind that inside that building was probably a key to finding Polaris. He thought about it and remembered something important. Hey, didn't you say that the heart of Polaris had a curse in it?
Yes, the curse of the heart.
If it's a curse, then I should be able to pick it up with a mark. Dawn's eyes lit up.
Then maybe through there is home.
Exactly. It was agreed that they would go inside. They set out across the barren wasteland toward the wooden building. Upon closer inspection, they would have known it was a library. Scorched and battered, abandoned, but a library all the same. They came upon the great wooden double doors. They were trimmed with gold that now was peeling and melty in some places. They gave the doors a good push before noticing that they were pullable handles. They pulled the doors and halted almost immediately for the horrid screeching sound they made. The hinges were rusted and falling apart, but they had to get inside. They pulled the doors again, and the screeching started up again, but this time they did not stop until a reasonably sized gap formed between them. The two children squeezed through the tight gap and gasped at the sheer size of the shelves inside. Everything was laced in dust. The bookcases that had 10 to 14 shelves at times carried many books, and there were so many of these cases that they lined a small row from the doors where they stood to a tiny desk in the background. The ceiling was made of glass, though foggy, it diffused the light charmingly. And along each row, scattered on the red carpet, which if you got down and smelled it, I am sure would give off the fragrance of dust, were multitudes of loose pages and paper. There were 3 steps descending from the doors. The children carefully walked these and stepped lightly on the red carpet. The air was very still, and though it was long abandoned, they dared not speak. Dawn glided down an aisle with small, careful steps. She peered at each spine in turn as if to find something. Dylan followed her at a length. She reached and pulled out a red book with gold binding. She opened it and turned a single page. Her hand left the page to better support the book when the pages started turning on their own. The loose papers on the floor and shelves began to fly around in a whirlwind. The quiet air of before was now lost to chaos. The pages of the red book would fly and stop on certain pages. Dawn began to read out words it stopped on.
You are not from this place. Be gone and away.
The wind whipped in her face, and her hair blew in the way of her sight. Dylan also picked up a book at this time. He opened it and called to the strange wind. We have come to find Polaris! The wind died down suddenly. The loose pages returned to the floor and the dust settled. The book pages turned to the last page for both books. Please take to back desk to check out and return, they said together. They looked at one another and put their books back. They walked along the red carpeting among the forest of bookcases. The dark wood desk was getting closer and closer. 2 signs hung above it. They were old and corroded, but still written upon them were the words, "Check out" and "Return." When they got to the desk, they waited for a while for the curse to appear, but it did not. A small paper sign vibrated in its metal stand. "Come behind the desk for your library card," it read. They slowly came behind the desk and stood at a big book at its center. It was a record book of all the checkouts and returns. It flipped and flipped with only a few seconds to read each word. It took many hours, but Dylan managed to write down everything with a pen he had found and a scrap page. In short, this was what it said.